Happy Thursday, everybody. Josh here with On the Wrong Lead. Another episode of Drinking Champagne coming your way. I am joined, as always, by Mr. Andrew Champagne. Andrew, it feels good to be back in my normal setup. I feel like all last week I was in hotel rooms. I was at a guest at a friend's house, and man, just like being out of my element with all the recording and all the other stuff, like man, like I felt very naked last week. And I was fully clothed for all these recordings, but it
Thank
just
God.
but it just I don't know, it just felt weird not having all my all my bells and whistles that I've gotten, like creature comforts I've gotten used to here. But yeah, it's good. It's good to be doing another normal episode, normal time, and relatively. I was gonna say relatively normal topic. You know, we're done with what we're gonna obviously kind of recap the Derby and recap kind of what we saw last weekend, and I'll talk a little bit about my trip, which I had a blast at. But yeah, we can take a breath for. I was gonna say at least a week till Preakness, where we have another kind of big day of racing. We'll see what happens. Preakness isn't Belmont, but I don't know. We usually get some good races. Although, Andrew, are they running the Man of War this weekend?
They are indeed, such as the field is. It's not impressive.
Okay. Yeah,
Once again, our turf horses are not great. Not great, Bob. Not great.
yeah, I remember when I first bet the Derby. Obviously, I've told the story numerous times to justify here. Well, I had such a great weekend. I'm like, when can I bet on races like this again? And I believe it was Michael Pellerin. I think he's Horse Guy Mike on Twitter, if I remember correctly. He was on Reddit and he had posted, "Well, Man of War weekend is coming up, and there's a pretty good racing coming up at Belmont." And so I fired at Belmont that next weekend. So I always remember that Man of War is run the week after the Derby because of that. Shout out to Mike there.
They're running the Peter Pan as well, so you'll see a bunch of 3-year-olds that could run in the Preakness and decided to run for less money.
Yeah, and I honestly I haven't. I know we're still obviously the Derby is still fresh in everyone's mind, I believe, but I haven't even looked ahead to Preakness probables. To see who is going to run, who's not going to run. I already heard that McPeak. He wasn't very committal to it. He was kind of wishy-washy. My guess is he's going to run. If you made me bet on it right now, but he just seems like the kind of guy who's not going to pass that up. But yeah, we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, Kenny McPeak was initially very non-committal in the days after the Kentucky Derby. That, of course, sparked the annual Change the Triple Crown people coming out on Twitter. We'll get there on this show. I promise I have thoughts. Having said that, yeah, he does seem to have come out of the Kentucky Derby well, by all accounts. I don't want to say it would shock me if he did not send Mystic Dan to the Preakness, but I do think it's more likely than not that he goes.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I guess let's talk a little bit about the Derby, and just I mean there's so many places that I think we could start at.
Well, if I may hijack this just for a minute, because
Yeah.
before we do anything as far as going into the race, we need to give kudos, Josh, to a couple of people. First of all, I know you've got the soundboard. I know you
Mhm.
have it. I'm going to need you to get the applause button ready for our very good friend, Caitlin Free, whose analysis of the Kentucky Derby prior to the race was as spot on as you will ever get from any handicapper anywhere. And it included throwing in a horse that was darn near 20-1 in the form of Mystic Dan. The other person we need to give a shout out to with regard to the Kentucky Derby, and he has heard this feedback from people much more important than us, Brian Hernandez Jr., with one of the greatest rides I have ever seen in the Kentucky Derby. One of an old coworker's favorite expressions, Todd Schrupp's, is rolling the dice along the pine. You can't roll the dice more aggressively than Brian Hernandez did, going around the far turn in the Kentucky Derby, just off the pace, behind a horse that's probably going to tire. If that hole closes, forget about where Mystic Dan finishes. I don't know if Brian Hernandez stays on the horse. There are only a couple of rides in the history of the Kentucky Derby that I think definitively made the difference in a horse winning the Derby and not winning the Derby. This one was one of them. This one goes down with Sonny Leone on Rich Strike. It goes down with Bill Shoemaker on Ferdinand. This was brilliant.
Yeah, and it's watching the race live. I remember seeing Mystic Dan make that move, and then right behind him was Catching Freedom, and I was licking my lips because I was like, all right, here we go. Catching Freedom is just going to follow this path, and he's just going to go. But Mystic Dan opened up and absolutely made everyone come and get him. And we had a tight photo finish, but I thought it was pretty clear live that Mystic Dan got up there. And it seemed like, Catching Freedom maybe was a little too far back. I'm not sure, or maybe just was the fact that Mystic Dan made that move before he could. I think was probably the difference with that. But just funny story about Mystic Dan. I was you have like an hour before the race, and I had a pretty good idea of how I was going to bet the Derby, and I had Catching Freedom on top, and I had I used Sierra Leone for I believe I used him in second, so I kind of had those two first, second, and then I'm just like trying to think of horses to fill this out. I'm going back and forth, and my friend who's hosting the party that I'm at comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, I haven't bet anything all day. Like, I just want to fire at long shots. Just give me long shots." And I'm like, "Well, like, how long are you talking, right?" Like, because I told him there's a horse that's at 12-1. I kind of like. There's a horse. There's horses at like different prices. He's like, I want like 20-1. And so I'm looking, and I'm like, so then I start looking at the bottom of my super, and who did I use? Of course, Mystic Dan. So I'm like, why don't you try Mystic Dan? He's a long shot. Honor Marie was around there, so I gave him Honor Marie because I used Honor Marie in like I think second and third in the super, and then Forever Young I think was sitting around 8-1, 7 to 8-1 there, and so I told him like those are like the longer prices I like. He's like, all right, cool. And so he bet Mystic Dan, and then I think he bet Domestic Product. Put 25 to win on it, and on both horses, and he comes out $500 richer on that one, and I'm just like sitting here like looking at my upside down superfecta, and I'm just like, man, I had all the right horse, I had all the horses. I didn't even go that deep. My superfecta ticket was like $20, $24. So it's not like I, was using a ton of horses in it. But I kind of had the right idea, but obviously wrong order. And Andrew, something that all too well because you just attract these kinds of people. My Matt, who I do Shots In podcast with, I'd ask him like, hey, just do a short Oaks and a short Derby video. Just get your thoughts out there. We're not doing a Shots In podcast, and so he gives out just a touch on the his Derby pick, and just a touch finishes dead last. And the poor guy, I mean, people on Twitter, YouTube, they can't help themselves. So they were, he was like, he was just, I mean, he was laughing about it, right? Because he's like, yeah, of course, the horse runs up the track. Like that's my luck. But I do, I'm not going to beat you up too much, Andrew, on this. And there's a couple of reasons, right? One, and I've mentioned this, and I'll mention this. I mentioned this to you in DMs after I sent you the screenshot that we'll talk about. But the great thing about this game is that I like a horse, you like a horse, and instead of just you and I just arguing about it over and over again, we get to put our hard-earned money on the line against each other in these pari-mutuel pools. And you've been banging the fierceness drum for a long, long time. You stuck to your guns, and fierceness ran exactly how I thought he would. Now there are people, and this isn't a shot at you, Andrew, but there are people much smarter than you that had very similar, if not stronger, opinion on fierceness than you. I forgot. I remember Ed said in one of our chats that someone thought that he was like even money, like he was an even money shot, And I don't know if you would have gone that far. I think you were closer to the 2-to-1 price you thought was fair, and so you did get a bit of an overlay on what you thought there, and you bet, hey. If you thought value was 2-to-1 and you bet him to win, I mean, you got value if that's where you kind of sat. But I did a short, and I just titled the short "Fierceness Will Not Win the Kentucky Derby," and a gentleman replied to it and said, "Thank you for posting this video. This video made me put an additional $300 to win on fierceness. I have no idea who you're going to make money on." And it just made my little black heart just a little. It eased the pain of being close and still wrong on the Derby with the other horses I used. But I think I took. I made a couple of comments, I think, to you in our group chats.
Just a couple, just a couple,
few,
just a few.
a few. But it's all in good fun.
Absolutely. And look, this is the beauty of this game. The beauty of this game is that it's really, really, really hard. Okay. Mm-hmm. This is a game where it's a lot like baseball. If 30% of your top picks hit, you're pretty darn good at what you do. 300 batting average probably gets you into the Hall of Fame. So all you can do is find places to take your stand and hope that you're right. I was live to a fierceness singled really well on the Oaks, by the way. That was a pretty good end of the card for me. Was live in the Oaks Turf Classic Derby Pick 3, which, by the way, can we talk about how I'm Very Busy was somehow the 8-5 favorite in the Turf Classic? That made no sense even as it was happening. People, Lasix matters. If a horse that has only run really well on Lasix doesn't have Lasix, maybe don't bet the horse at 8-5. Just saying. That's your handicapping wisdom for the day. But I was putting myself in position to where if fierceness won the Kentucky Derby, I was going to have a very good weekend, regardless of anything else that happened. And I got to tell you, I shared the feelings of, I'm pretty sure, John Velasquez at about the half-mile pole. Because going into the far turn, you can see him do the look back between the legs. And that's often a tell where a jockey thinks, I've got horse here. I need to focus on who's behind me rather than the horses in front of me. 5 to 10 seconds later, John Velasquez starts asking fierceness nothing. Absolutely nothing. And you could hear like the engine sputtering as he fell back into the Kentucky Derby field. And I'm turning, I'm going, Nope. You knew instantly, right as the field turned for home, when Fierceness was getting swallowed up by the horses in the second flight coming forward, Mystic Dan being one of them. And I just remember thinking, nope, not going to happen. Put yourself in a decent spot with your strongest opinion. And sometimes as horse players, our strong opinions aren't right. The key is when they are right, you want to make them hurt. So, yeah, that was not all told. I ran second a lot leading up to the Kentucky Derby. If you want to gag, anybody out there, feeling a need, to throw up and ease some uneasiness within their systems, watch the Knicks go and tell me how Kapuna doesn't get up. That cost me a pick 4. The other Chad Brown winning the race with the European import later on in the card. I believe that was the 7th race of the program. Yeah, ran second there too, beaten about a head. That was not fun. Those 2 heads go the other way. I have a much better day. But ultimately, we're horse players. Sometimes you're the windshield and sometimes you're the bug. Friday, I was the windshield. Had a good day on Friday. Saturday, though, big bug energy. But you know what? We press on. And we press on knowing that no matter how bad my day was on Saturday, the person whose name I will not dignify, who commented on your short talking about throwing another $300 on Fierceness, paid for his arrogance. Folks, quick public service announcement from the guy who witnessed bye-bye Coach K, the guy who witnessed let him shoot it, and now the guy that witnessed throw another $300 on Fierceness. Don't be this person. The gambling gods hate these people. Stop being this person. It costs nothing, and I mean nothing, to be a decent person. And I get a little animated. Josh is my friend. Josh is allowed to come at me every once in a while, knowing that it's all tongue-in-cheek, it's all in good fun, and the fact that, hey, it's horse racing. We're going to read the form differently. That's why this is a fun show. You don't get to do that. You don't get to act like a jerk solely for acting like a jerk, thinking that you're protected by a keyboard and a screen. And if I was a less decent person, I would throw this comment up on the screen right now for all of the YouTube commenters that are out there to see it, just so this guy could get dragged for it. I'm not going to do that. You want to see that comment? Go find Josh's short. But that pissed me off. So for that matter, don't be that person. Please, just don't do it.
Yeah, going back to the race you talked about, I believe it was, you said race 7, the Distaff Turf Mile.
That's it, yeah.
Funny story about that race, and this, I think, is just going to continue the story of how I am just Caleb's dad when it comes to handicapping. I obviously I was at a party, and I have some videos and stuff I took at the party and at that weekend. I'm gonna try and put together a vlog. Normally I do like daily recaps and stuff, so I can kind of toss them in the middle. But I didn't record anything like daily, so I might see how all of it comes together, all the just the random videos I took, and see how they look. But I, on Saturday especially, I was kind of out of pocket. I was just I bet a lot less than I normally do on the Derby this year, and I think part of that is because I wasn't at my computer. I wasn't sitting down. I didn't have all my screens and everything in front of me. So I wasn't as aggressive. I was very much, hey, I'll bet a little bit to win on a couple of these races. Maybe I'll play an exacta or something. But one of the races that I really did like was I really liked Chili Flag in this race. And so I had a win bet on it. And so I basically paid for most of my days betting after that. And Caleb was not happy in our group chat, and I, as I do, because I kind of red board him a little bit in the show, and he's like, "Only you and my dad are on that damn that I mean he used a different word. That damn chili flag horse in like, and I was like of course if I was on it that Caleb's dad's on it. So I thought that was a funny little story, but yeah, I had a really really fun weekend. I went to Thurby
I'm
and
sorry, you went to what?
Thurby
I'm
the
sorry, I'm not familiar. What is that?
Thursday before the Derby.
Better.
Uh, but yeah, so I kind of I was talking to some of the locals and I was talking to the my Lyft driver and just like a bunch of different people about this. And so, I know you make fun of it and everything, but so where it really came from is, the Kentucky Derby. I mean, it's always been a spectacle and event, but locals used to go to it, tons of them. I mean, and a lot of them still do, or there's still a fair amount of them. But as time has gone on, like everything else in the world, I feel like people are getting priced out of it. So then you might know the timeline better, but like after that, obviously, Oaks Day became kind of the locals' day. So the locals would go on Oaks Day, and then they wouldn't mess with Derby. Well, Oaks Day now has basically kind of gotten the same almost now. I mean, heck, now you can't even buy tickets for Oaks Day by itself. You have to buy them with Derby tickets. So now that's how Thurby was born, because now that's the real locals day again.
But what happens when that day gets taken over? Is 50 Tuesday going to become the locals day and they're just stepping out ahead of it?
Well, 50 Tuesday is just a cheap day to go apparently. So I found that out, but yeah. So yeah, so we went to the track, had a good time, and we had some weird box seats. It was a yeah, it was just a fun event. Mint juleps were $22. Um, and just the funniest thing happened. So my friend Matt, he is sitting there. He's like waving his arms. I don't know, he's being animated or something. Knocks over a girl's drink.
Oh no.
Not in our group, and he feels terrible. He's like, I'm gonna buy you another one, right? And it was like a vodka soda or something. So we go down to go get in line for drinks, and so he sits there, and me and his wife, my friend Carrie Lee, we go down. I get a julep, she gets a julep, and then we get a vodka soda too to replace it. Well, Matt felt so bad, he got in line to get himself a drink, and he got another vodka soda. Right, so like basically giving her two vodka sodas. So me and Carrie Lee are just talking, sitting there waiting, and what does Carrie Lee do? Drop the vodka soda that we had for the person. Mind you, this is $22 a drink. We're down $44 at this point. And so the third drink does make it up to her, and he's just like, it was like just total karma. I tried to be nice and bring you two drinks, and then my wife spilled the other one. So it's
Way
just
to
like,
throw his wife under the bus.
yeah, I mean, there were lots of drinks spilled. At one point, um, I want to say that we had a running tally, and I think over $100 worth of drinks were spilled at some point. So yeah, that was a that was an interesting experience. It was fun. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I can do without $22 cocktails. But I say that, and then I go to Vegas and I pay that anyways. But um, you know, uh, so Friday was a kind of a down day. We just prepped for this humongous party, and Saturday was just a fun party, good vibe. It was laid back. We had a band and stuff. I mean, it was just a fun time. My friend Carrie Lee cooked a crap ton, and their neighbors as well made so much food, and it was awesome. It was just such a fun time. Um, you know, it was a very long day because it was basically, you know, I woke up at like 9 a.m. and I'm just doing what I can to help them without being in the way, which is really tough because they have a set plan. They know what they got to do. And I'm just like, can I help? And they're like, no, not really. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stand here. Can I help now? Like I'm a guest in their house trying to figure stuff out. But
See, you're nicer than me. I would ask once, and when they said, "No, we're good," that's when I go to the kitchen and or go to the living room, excuse me, and I get really well acquainted with the comfy spot on the couch.
um, but yeah, it was a blast. We had a great time. Wagering wise, I mean, I didn't have a great weekend. I was close on a couple of things, but unfortunately came a little short on everything. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, I've said this before. Friday ended really well for me. I played 4 pick fours on Friday, Josh. I went 3 for 4 in 3 of them. That hurts. And thankfully, I dove back into the late pick 3, which wound up paying really well because there was an 8-1 shot or so that won the finale. I did really well in the 2 races nobody cares about after the Kentucky Oaks. That long shot I gave out as the long shot of the day wound up running second in the 13th race at 16-1. Minx Prizes, I think the name, Minx Palace. Minx Palace is the name of that horse. Keep an eye on that horse. You'll want to use that one next time out. Clearly needed a race and ran really well to be a best of the rest second behind a winner that sort of aired for Powerhouse Connections. Saturday, a lot of running second. Earlier on in the card, ran second a lot. Wasn't too far off, but just picking the horses that ran underneath. The 2 big leans I had all day were Hoist the Gold and Fierceness. Hoist the Gold didn't break. That was pretty much it for that horse. And Fierceness we've already talked about. So when you pin your day around 2 horses that don't win, chances are it's going to be a pretty lousy day. But even so, if Kapuna gets up, it's a significantly better day. So that's the one that's going to be in my nightmares for quite a while. I have no idea how Kapuna doesn't get by through the length of the stretch, given the early fractions. The winner wound up setting and hanging on through. That was ugly, man.
Yeah. Anything else about the weekend you want to talk about?
Shout out to the people at the Pleasanton OTB outside the Alameda County Fair. Dennis Miller and company ran a great contest. It was a free one. You paid your entry. You got in for $5 to the OTB. You also got a pretty darn nice shirt. So, hey, cheap shirt, free contest. These people speak my language, Josh.
Cool. Anything else? What else you got going on this week?
Well, this week's a little bit quiet. I start my annual volunteer project this week. As frequent listeners and people who know me know very well, my long-suffering fiance is a 5th grade teacher at a local public elementary school. She has to deal with 30 10-year-olds and then deal with me. She is a saint. And every year what I do is I put my television and radio background to good use, and I edit a video slideshow of the kids that are going to be honored at the promotion ceremony next month. Set it to music, time everything out. The photos gradually go and they get older and older and older. And I have been told the last couple of years that the parents have cried. It's been really cool. I haven't had a chance to actually see the showing of the video because the last several years, their promotion ceremony has been held when I'm traveling for work. 2 years ago, I was traveling to Toronto for a conference. Last year, I was traveling to England for my then company's leadership academy. So this year, I might actually get a chance to see the video. My fiance was telling me, oh, it's crowded there. It's crowded there. You might not get a ticket. Yeah, I'll talk to your principal. Hey, principal, I was the one that did this video that's making everybody cry. You care if I stand in the back? No? Cool. She's outvoted once again. Again, long-suffering fiance who I love very, very much. But I'm starting that this weekend, and that's going to be something fun that I really enjoy doing. It's something where I can give something back to something that means a lot to my future wife and to the people that are important to her. So it winds up being something that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no stream for us this week. I'm gonna talk with Matt about getting something out for Shots In. I think they're running Friday night into Saturday this week. So
Friday night instead of Saturday. You've
yep,
got to be shut-inning me.
they do that at least once a month. I think is what they do. But so hopefully we'll have an episode of that coming out this week, and then we should be back with live streams, obviously, for next week for Preakness Day. So
Preakness Day. Okay. I need to get this ran in before we wind up wrapping up for
yep,
the week. So I had a tweet that, by my admittedly low standards, went viral a couple of days ago, in which I channeled John F. Kennedy, as one is wont to do, in the speech that he said, "We do things not because they are easy, but because they are hard." Well, that was the day a whole bunch of people on horse racing Twitter said, "We need to change the Triple Crown because it's too hard." Look, I am the rare traditionalist that will admit I'm going to get beat on this one. At some point, they are going to change the Triple Crown. If the Preakness keeps drawing 6, 7 horse fields, that's not desirable. Having said that, what I want when they do that, and look, it probably is a when rather than an if at this point. The fact that we're talking about a Kentucky Derby winner potentially skipping the Preakness despite being healthy is proof positive of that. What I want from the industry is an admission that changing the calendar is the easy way out, as opposed to changing the way horses are bred, addressing issues with HICE's policies where you can't give injections 14 days before a race. Gee, if only there was a way to potentially rewrite certain things. Oh, wait, there is. If we were looking at horses that don't run as much and seeing that as an issue. By the way, credit to Ken McPeek, because of the trainers that are out there, he is one of the ones that's more inclined to take shots in logical spots. And if he says that, hey, Mystic Dan is not going to benefit from running in the Preakness, we're going to wait for the Belmont at Saratoga, I respect that. This isn't a trainer issue. The example I keep going back to is Flightline. If John Sadler thought Flightline could handle running every 2 to 3 weeks, I'm pretty sure he would be running every 2 or 3 weeks, because a healthy Flightline is probably the best horse we've seen in quite some time. Problem is, horses aren't bred or campaigned like that anymore. The ones that are out there run less, they get whisked off to stud, where they throw horses that wind up running less. And I know there are some breeders out there that are going to hear that and think they're being attacked. I'm not attacking breeders. It's a fact. We're not breeding as many horses, and the ones that we do breed are running less, they're running shorter distances, and they need more time between races than the horses of years past. That's not an attack. That's factual data. If you don't like the data, take that up with the Jockey Club. I understand that the Triple Crown is probably going to change. It's probably going to change within the next 5 to 10 years. It has changed before for logical reasons. They used to run races a week apart, for goodness sakes. All I want is an admission that racing wasn't willing to try anything else. That's it. That's all I want. Because if racing wanted to try something else, they would have. Fair assessment?
yep, I think so. It's we've talked about it a lot, right? We've talked about you don't change the race, you change the horse, and other things. And I think as fans of the sport, we've seen, we've seen the limitation of horses as of late. They're doing incredible things on the track. You look at a horse like Flightline, right? But longevity is now an issue where we see these classic distance horses, and these horses that run long generally seem to be the ones that stick around longer, Well, the really good ones don't seem like they're sticking around very long at all. So, yeah, it's a shame, and I know we talk a lot about, there's more options for wagering now, for gambling, right? Everyone can just go to the casino that's 15 minutes from their house, or can bet online. Sorry, California. And obviously that's a huge part of it. But I mean, you mean to tell me that if we didn't have, more Whitmores of the world, more, I mean, I remember even like City of Light and Accelerate that stuck around for a couple of years, and those horses, being able to follow those horses, and how sad people were when those horses retired. Those horses ran an extra year than most of the horses that run in now. So
City of Light gets to me because he ran a hole in the wind in that year's Pegasus. And if he had been allowed to run that year, he would have obliterated everything from 7 furlongs to 1.25 miles. And if you really want something that just tugs at the heartstrings, I believe this was a Zoe Metz photo. I could be very wrong about that, but there is a photo of City of Light leaving Michael McCarthy's barn, and Michael McCarthy's family and help being devastated because this horse was going to stud, which economically 100% the right move, given the way the landscape is. Does it suck we didn't get to see a full campaign of what that horse was going to do? I mean, that horse could have won races from the Carter to the Breeders' Cup Classic and everything in between. And that's just the landscape of breeding, and that's the way things are right now. It's backwards. And look, I am not saying we need to only breed to horses that ran through age 5 and all these extreme things. Army Mule ran 3 times over the course of a year and was retired. He had issues. He's seeing a whole bunch of mares. Nashville's Stallion commercial includes a pre-debut workout testimonial from Todd Pletcher. There are certain horses that should not be reproducing at the rates that they are. They're throwing horses that look really good in a sales ring, though, and money talks. I am willing to compromise on a number of things, but we can all agree certain things are broken, right? It doesn't take an idiot. You shouldn't be surprised when you look at this, see certain things are broken, and all of a sudden the failure to fix them becomes an issue. And that's what's happened here.
all right, I think that's going to do it for us here on the Wrong Lead. Obviously, check us out at onthewronglead.com, at wrong_lead on Twitter.
All the buttons.
Andrew is at Andrew Champagne. I am at Cherry Drank. Make sure you check out Andrew's stuff on winnersandwhiners.com. And yeah, have a good weekend, guys. We will catch you next